Good morning. You are tuned into a special Healing Our Land broadcast on Boston Black News on Boston Praise Radio ONTV Network. I will be your host, Pastor Hobbs, live here in the studio with my special guest, President of the Boston City Council, Ed Flynn. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's awesome to be with you, Pastor, and great to talk about the issues of the day and to listen to concerns from parishioners and people across the city. So honored to be here with you and love coming here, talking to you and talking to Pastor Bruce and my good friend Larry Ellison as well, usually on Saturdays. Yes. So it's a lot of fun. Thank you for the invite, and really happy to be here with you.
Thank you, sir. Well, we appreciate you being here. You're a friend here on Boston Praise Radio and TV Network and Boston Black News and WBPG-LP 102.9 over. And so we just appreciate you consistently being a presence. Sometimes people come during campaign time, but we don't hear from them subsequent that. So we appreciate you being here consistently, not just here on the air, but in the community. And as we were talking about offline about the Thanksgiving event that we have coming up, and you said that you might stop by.
I'm going to try to stop by with my wife, Kristen. I'm going to go to Pine Street Inn and St. Francis House, which are in my district. And I'm going to try to make it by here 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock on Thursday to help out, to make a donation, to be as supportive as I can. But I have great respect for the role this church plays in the community, helping people, especially families in need. Our seniors, this church has always been there for the residents of Boston. So I just want to come by, say thank you, and hopefully help out a little bit. But I also was listening to the advertisement. My friend, who's an associate pastor here, Pastor Maurice. I worked with Pastor Maurice at the Suffolk Superior Court, and I know he's part of the outreach too on Thanksgiving. So it'll be fun to say hello to Pastor Maurice and Pastor Bruce and Pastor Karen and yourself. So again, have great respect for the work you do. You're not looking for credit, but you want to help people. And that's what this church is all about.
Okay. We'll buzz on this one. Okay. I guess your associate that's trying to get in at the door.
Okay.
So we'll let her, hopefully Renee will be able to buzz her in. But you know what? I'm actually going to make sure that she actually does get in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put the camera on you, and I want you to talk about how long have you, so you said you were a probation officer. Talk a little bit about that, because that's something you did prior to you becoming an elected official. Talk a little bit about your experience there and how you went from there to becoming a city councilor.
It was a tremendous opportunity being a probation officer. I was at Suffolk Superior Court for almost 9 years. Had the opportunity to work with some great probation officers and associate probation officers, court officers. But the probation department plays a critical role in the lives of returning citizens. It ensures that judges' orders are followed, but what's more important than that, it's giving some hope, giving opportunity, encouragement to returning citizens, ensuring that they have the access to a job, to an employment training program, mental health counseling, and also it can be strict at times as well, enforcing the orders of the court, which include drug testing and other qualifications and requirements. It's also working with community groups, working with the public, working with the police. Ensuring public safety is a top priority, but also ensuring that our returning citizens have the tools, the resources, so that they're able to get back on their feet. Everybody makes mistakes, myself included, and what returning citizens want is to be treated with respect and dignity. They realize that they have made a mistake, but there should be an opportunity for them still in this city. Give them an opportunity to get back on their feet. They need the tools, the support, the encouragement to make that happen. But there's a lot of dedicated people across the city willing to help, including the church. The church plays a critical role in the city of Boston, and I'm honored to work with the clergy on this issue and my colleagues in government. So it's been a wonderful experience. I loved being a probation officer. At some point, I would like to maybe get involved again in the court system or public safety, helping returning citizens. But it was a tremendous experience, and I'm glad I did it.
Appreciate you your commitment to returning citizens, and as you said, it's a community that we, being Global Ministries Christian Church, as well as certainly Healing Our Land Ministry, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but we have been actually working with Sheriff Tompkins and with Carlos Goulart from the Nashville County Jail, being very intentional about making sure that they can exercise their right to vote. Here in Massachusetts, people are especially qualified, and they actually don't even have to register. They can participate via an absentee ballot if they are incarcerated, if they're not presently serving a felony conviction. And they actually had that right even for those who were serving felony convictions up until 2000. And quite candidly, on the state level, there's actually a constitutional amendment piece of legislation, because it literally takes a constitutional amendment to restore the right now that it was taken since 2000. So our hope is ultimately to restore that right for felons to also be able to vote. While we are working with that, we're trying to make sure that the infrastructure is in place. So I spoke with, interesting enough, Councilor at Large, Bruce Lejeune, who was really instrumental, she and Brian Worrell, with having a hearing for the budget for the Office of Returning Citizens, because they had no budget. Now they have a $2.6 million budget. And so, and $1 million of those dollars went specifically for grants for people who are returned citizens who are now running organizations. And we actually were able to get some resources. Brother Eric Kennedy, who's a returned citizen, who, interesting enough, he met us via this broadcast.
Okay.
Because we had a broadcast called the Church of the Midnight Hour from 11 p.m. till 6 in the morning. We were releasing time on our FM station before we actually had our own FM station. And so from Nashville County Jail to the Suffolk County House of Correction, through him actually being incarcerated, serving time for 5 years, he stayed connected to Boston Praise Radio and TV Network. He was able to write back and forth. That's where he learned that he actually had the right to vote while he was incarcerated. But again, the infrastructure is not in place. There's no absentee ballot applications, no registration forms, the books, and even know about the various candidates and the various ballot initiative questions. Those kind of things are, that civic education is a big piece that still we're working to put into place. And so we have a vision actually for a mobile ballot box initiative that will, since this Votes Act has passed on the state level, most recently, to implement that, the hope is that the sheriffs would communicate electronically to the elections department everyone who's eligible to vote. And then in turn, the elections department would create absentee ballot applications with their names on it, just as you and I get to our home mail-in ballot application opportunities if we're registered. And being that they don't have to register because they're specially qualified, they should automatically get this absentee ballot application with their name on it to their address that temporarily happens to be where they're housed incarceration.
That's right.
So that's the vision, and we have yet for that to come into full fruition. Sheriff Tompkins is in support of it now, and so he, as the only sheriff of color in the entire Commonwealth, and I have to say, I'm part of a coalition called Democracy Behind Bars Coalition, and we are dealing with people who are dealing with sheriffs from across the Commonwealth. He happens to be the one that is the most liberal in terms of being able to afford us entree, all of our volunteers, pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and even post this at this stage of the pandemic, and bringing in the candidates. Like, what a difference a DA makes. That was unprecedented to bring in. I mean, district attorneys are so integral to people's experiences who are incarcerated. So to be able to bring all the candidates inside the House of Correction and have them actually engage the returning citizens, they were able to make an informed decision with who they were going to cast their ballot for. Subsequent to that, we've been able to bring in various candidates. As you know, we were talking a little bit about mass and cast, and that's actually right outside where the House of Correction sits. And so that's often a challenge for folks who are there navigating, coming out from there, that population, where many of them are people who were dealing with addiction and mental illness and so forth and so on. So we were able to bring in all of the candidates for District 3. There were like 7 into the House of Correction, and they were able to go cell to cell and engage with the returning citizens, and again ask them so they could make an informed decision. So the ballot box initiative will ultimately build that infrastructure so that what we're doing is not piecemeal and volunteers, and that the, quite candidly, even as it stands, while it's progress, ultimately now what happens is we bring in the absentee ballot applications, we bring in the registration forms, and we can bring in the candidates, and because they allow us to come in, we then have to bring those to the elections department, and sometimes it falls through the cracks, but the person who's incarcerated themselves doesn't have the agency to cast their ballot in a box. It has to go through a correctional officer, a case manager, or someone that we've got to hope will ultimately, and we do kind of track it. If it falls, we have a good relationship with the elections department to kind of find out what happened. But the point is to institutionalize it, and that's our vision. And it was at large City Councilor Lejeune who said here when she was campaigning that she would support that. I know Councilor Mejia, she isn't supportive, but she actually helped us to get the drop boxes in the lobby, which was unprecedented, didn't happen before. So is that something that you would support?
That's something I would support. I have great respect for Sheriff Stephen Tompkins, does an exceptional job.
Yes.
In Boston and throughout Suffolk County, well-respected leader on criminal justice reform. That's something I would support. I would need to learn more about it. But the logistics of it would need to be established and set, and ensuring that, men and women that are behind bars have equal access to government services. That's what it's also all about. But also it's about a step towards showing these men and women that are incarcerated that they're still part of the community. That people on the outside have respect for them. We understand they made a mistake, but we're trying to help them get back on their feet, to show them respect, to show them dignity. And one way to show them respect and dignity is allowing them the opportunity to decide for themselves who are good candidates that could represent them. They also need, during that process, as a probation officer, I would have a lot of young men coming out of jail who didn't have access to a birth certificate.
That's right.
Or a license.
Yes.
And it was a very difficult time getting a birth certificate for a young man. And that was almost their number one priority, getting a birth certificate, so then they could start applying for jobs, start applying for training programs. But a lot of this work takes effort, takes time, and resources, and that's something we need to work together on. I'm working with Councilor Brian Worrell, on some public safety initiatives, community policing, as it relates to gun violence. Councilor Worrell has done an excellent job in this regard, as has Steve Tompkins, and Councilor Mejia, who has been very active in this issue. So it's about working together,
Yes.
Making sure that returning citizens are heard, their voices are heard. I attend the commission, the Black Men and Black Boys Commission.
Excellent.
Usually I try to go once a month or every other month, and I go there and I just listen. I don't say anything. They like that I'm there, but it makes me a better city councilor, a better leader, just listening to the men talk about their experiences, what city government could do for them, what society could do for them. But I also know that these men want to make a difference. They want to contribute, as do black men across the city. But they need support from city government, from state government, from the business community.
That's right.
We have a growing, booming Boston economy down the seaport.
That's right.
But we want to make sure that area of the city, every area of the city really, young black men and women are able to get into jobs. They can get into a training program. And that's what this city is all about, giving people hope, giving people an opportunity, giving them a hand up, not looking down on people because they made a mistake. And we've all been there during difficult times, and what we always wanted was a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of support.
That's right.
And help us get off our feet. So I admire this commission and the work they're doing. I know Tito Jackson has been active on it, and Frank Farrow and others, but they do wonderful work.
Yeah, no, I so appreciate that. Several of the things that you said. One with regard to the IDs and people coming out of incarceration, that being something that's some of the things that we actually do, being Healing Our Land, with the resources we were able to get from the Office of Returning Citizens, as I also serve as a volunteer chaplain there. So I'm able to go in, but with these opportunities that we bring in volunteers to go, and we go from unit to unit, we're also able to get them a brochure from Healing Our Land that they can actually reach me, and then we can come in and start to build a relationship with them to help them to get those things kind of in place. The Office of Returning Citizens as well, working in concert with them to be able to get things like birth certificates, Social Security cards, because those are things that you need to be able to get an ID, right? And when you come out, how do you really re-enter into society when you come out and you just have a prison ID? So it's interesting that you remember those things were important, and these are some of the things that, in concert with the Office of Returning Citizens, with these resources that they've been able to do, and we are a faith-based organization. So coupled with those two things, giving people hope, being able to, they can talk about their real life issues and address the issues that underlie their behavior, but also pathways back into reentry. As you're talking about housing, we know is number one, right? Housing as well as employment. They can make a living wage. I know you're familiar with T. Michael Thomas and the People's Academy, and that's one particular trade or one niche being coppersmith. But there's also Reverend Hutchinson, who works with Bishop Dickerson, Greater Love Tabernacle, who has a pre-apprenticeship training program. These are two people whom actually are targeted to making sure that returning citizens, who disproportionately are black and brown men and women, unfortunately, and poor folks, so that they're able to get this skill set. And so I know I've heard you on other broadcasts, but I'm going to ask you on this broadcast, your support for entities. You mentioned it broadly, but specifically with an entity like T. Michael Thomas and the People's Academy that does have a specific niche that can make a living wage, but is having some challenge apparently with it being able to, I guess he apparently has a lot, but I'm not sure what all the issues are around ultimately being able to get that building up and going. I know we've talked, myself and Stacey Borden and Ed Gaskins and some other folks, Armand Coleman and people who return citizens, about co-creating literally like a 5-star hotel built by returning citizens, and a block of rooms that they could actually live on. Talk about restorative justice, where if you've taken from the community and you want to feel like you want to do something to be able to give back, and building an institution, building something that literally you can have some ownership in, not a block, but actually something collectively that will be an economic engine to sustain programming. Is that something that you think could be, that could be conceivable?
I think so. I had the opportunity to visit T. Michael and the sheet metal program. I was impressed with the work they do. The people that are there working hard, dedicated, professional, hard working. I also know that T. Michael needs the support from the city of Boston, and that should be a priority. I also know that we want to make sure that we recently had the Boston jobs policy debated again at the City Hall. That's the annual report that comes to the city of Boston, Boston jobs for Boston residents. Okay. Looking at those results, but also the Employment Commission as well, where it's actually enforced. There's a law in place that deals with the enforcement piece of it. The problem is that aspect is not completely enforced, even though there's a law in the books that does that. But what I would like to see is, if companies disregard that policy, they should not be able to compete for city contracts if they're not doing their best to bring men of color, women of color, people of color into jobs in the building construction areas, if they're not doing that, intentionally discriminating against people, they should not be able to bid on future City of Boston contracts, whether it was for $5 or $5 million.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's a compliance piece. I know Minister Flynn has been a big advocate, and I believe she's now actually a commissioner in terms of making sure that, again, this compliance, because there's one thing, as you said, so how is that something, so is that something that you guys can impose on the city council, or how do you have that power? Or
The city council plays a critical role on that issue. We meet on it at least once a year, go over the numbers, and we had the hearing recently. We had it on Zoom, I believe, but the meeting itself is more effective when it's in person at the city council chamber. But what is important is the public testimony, listening to residents about the impact this policy has, and the enforcement. That's the critical piece. The enforcement piece was actually established under Mayor Flynn, and I follow that enforcement piece pretty closely, because if the law is on the books and we're not enforcing it, the law is almost irrelevant. We have to make a commitment as a city and as a society that we are going to enforce the policy, ensuring men and women of color, women also, returning citizens, are treated fairly in the employment sector, in the building trades. That's important, making sure that we give them an opportunity to reach the American dream. And that goes through employment and training, and they're making very good money, but that career should be open to everyone, not just the select few.
Outstanding. I'm curious, so you did not go, you went unopposed on this particular, and why do you think that is?
I went out unopposed for the last several times. I have a wonderful district. I represent South Boston, the South End, Chinatown, downtown Boston. I take this job very seriously. I work 7 days a week. My staff has been with me for almost 6 years now. We do an excellent job on constituent services. There's nothing glamorous about being a city councilor. It's the grunt work. It's returning phone calls. It's returning emails. It's quality of life issues. It's neighborhood issues. There's a place for these national issues, and that's important. But that's really not the issue. That's really not the job of a city council. A city councilor is about grinding it out, showing up in the community, helping people, especially people in need. I think that's the reason people trust me and respect me, is because of my work ethic. I take things personal. I take things very seriously. And I expect results from people in city government, and sometimes I demand results, and I don't take no for an answer. And I want quality of life issues addressed in my district, and that's important to me because that's important to my constituents. So that's the way I treat this job, is doing my best every day to improve the quality of life for residents in Boston. And that's what I encourage my fellow city councilors to do. Get in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning, work till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, meet department heads, know who to call when there's an issue with a traffic light or a pothole. And then at 4 o'clock, leave the building and go to community meetings at night till 7, 8 o'clock at night. You can't do this job from your house. You can't mail it in. You need to know who to call at a particular city department to get something done. And you make those relationships in the building. It's about working together, developing friendships, developing relationships. And politics is difficult. You have to have thick skin. You have to be ready to criticize people that may not like it, but you need to represent your constituents the best you can, and that's what really matters about being a district city council.
So what is it like being the president of the city council? It's one thing to serve as a district city councilor, and that's what you are. But what is it like being the president of the whole city council?
I loved it. It was it's 2 years coming up this December 31st. It's been a tremendous opportunity, tremendous experience. It's been challenging. It's been difficult. But I went into the office every day hoping to make things better for my colleagues, for the city council central staff, and for the residents of Boston, working closely with Mayor Wu and her team as well. But being a president of the city council, it's not about you and your political agenda or your political career. It's about helping your colleagues. Many of them are new. Many of them just started out. But helping your colleagues, hopefully providing some positive leadership to them so that they can be successful in doing the job. But it's a administrative job. It's a job that you have to be in there at least 5 days a week, working on human resources issues, administrative issues. You're almost like the director of the city council central staff as well, supervising a large team. So for me, it was a tremendous experience, tremendous honor, and I'm fortunate that my colleagues selected me as president.
So how does it happen? So the colleagues your colleagues are the one who determine who's going to be the president of the actual city council.
That's right. The colleagues will decide who gets to become president. You need 7 votes to become president. And when someone has 7 votes, sometimes they announce it in the media, sometimes they don't. But on the day we get sworn in, we have to formally vote for city council president. But there was always a lot of jockeying right after the election, but also during the election, there was a lot of jockeying as well, who would support who. So that process has been ongoing for a long period of time. But you need 7 votes from your city council colleagues, and they decide who they want representing them to be their leader.
So there are so many new city councils that are coming on to the council. Would there be any significant changes on the council as a result of this new slate of folks who are coming on?
I think there'll be many changes. We will still have a young group of colleagues coming in, and it's important that they are provided the opportunity to be successful, to learn about city government. That's what a new city councilor should do, is learn about the nuts and bolts of city government, how to get things done, who to contact at City Hall, develop relationships. But I'm confident in these new city councils. I think they're going to do an excellent job. They're all well educated. They have great experience, great temperament, ethics, leadership, and I'm looking forward to this group of colleagues coming in and making a major contribution and improving the lives of the residents of Boston.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilor. So what are some of the issues that you think that our city's facing that the Boston City Council can address?
The struggling school system hasn't improved. And 2 years ago, we were close to receivership by the state Department of Education. We are still in a school system that is still struggling. Many of our students are finding it very difficult to navigate the city system, public school system, in terms of learning. We have many students following the pandemic with many mental health challenges. We need to effectively work with these students to get them the counseling that they need and deserve. I'm going to continue working on ensuring we have money in the budget for mental health counseling. That's a critical aspect of it. But also our after-school programs, our sports programs, ensuring our students are learning these STEM subjects as well, providing them with an opportunity to be successful in a school that's safe and a school that's healthy. And when I mean healthy, that the air quality is good, the water fountains are working, there's air conditioning in the school, there's heat in the winter time, and safety in the school is also a priority of mine. I know that's more controversial, but I think we do need to have some public safety professionals in our schools to ensure our teachers are teaching and our students are learning. And there's nothing worse than having one student interrupt the entire learning for the entire class. But what I want to do is to get that young person that is being disruptive, getting that person into, maybe it's a mental health program or counseling, or maybe there's some family issues at home, engaging the family. But we need to provide healthy schools and safe schools, and that's going to be a top priority going forward as well.
Okay. You got a caller.
You got a call, okay.
Go right ahead, caller.
Hello, caller.
Good morning, Councilor. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Good. It's Larry Ellison.
Oh, hey, Larry. I thought I recognized your name.
Yeah, I was listening to you on the show, and just wanted to call in and thank you for the work that your family, traditionally, and yourself, to continue that work and justice for everyone. You know, looking at all of the recent court decisions as it affects people in my profession, particularly officers of color, and seeing these things been overturned, the drug test, the promotional exam, and the list goes on, and you having the courage to address these things. I just wanted to say thank you. Wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving as well. But the question is, how do we go forward, Counselor, with so these things don't be a continuum? Because the drug test took over 15 years to get that reversed. The testing, the judge said, has been going on discriminatory for over 50 years. We're seeing less and less of the diversity in the law enforcement. We're seeing it in the city, but not so much in the first responders. So, I wonder if you had any recommendation on how we move forward.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you for the work you have done as a police officer, police detective, providing incredible professionalism to the residents of Boston, especially during difficult times. I've always regarded you, and I think more importantly, the residents of Boston have regarded you for your keen input and your decision making in getting things done, especially in communities of color. They trusted you, they relied on you, and I if it was up to me, and I'm probably going to get myself in trouble here, but if it was up to me, Larry would be on the command staff. That's the type of Boston police officer Larry Ellison is about, and it's not about him, it's about providing the residents of Boston with a safe and healthy neighborhood. But on the drug testing, Larry, I followed it closely. I know it continued for a number of years through 3 mayors and many court cases, and it was always unfair the way the system punished the police officers of color as it relates to this drug testing. Once we found out that this was a problem, it should have been stopped immediately, and the court system should have resolved this, and City of Boston Police Department, Human Resources as well, should have resolved this. But it went on way too long. It impacted so many careers, young people, that really probably didn't continue with their career, or it impacted them in different ways, such as promotion. But
Right.
but what Manlio does is it effectively advocates and represents police officers of color, but it's a critically important organization. It holds elected officials accountable and the police department accountable. And you know, I'm glad that it's a strong organization. It's an organization that's desperately needed in the city. And the other thing I would say, Larry, is I want to see us doing more recruiting of Boston police in Dorchester, in Hyde Park, in Roxbury, in the South End, in Mattapan. But to do that, we have to also acknowledge that society and the media has not treated police officers with respect. And I think that's also impacting the way recruiting numbers are down. And that's why I go out of my way to talk about the positive aspects of the Boston Police, because when we talk about the negative aspects all the time, and when young people hear about that, they say, well, why do I want to be part of that organization when all I hear is people criticizing them? I think we have to change the narrative, change the subject, and focus on the positive and not always on the negative.
And that's true, Councilor, but just a few points on what first of all, the courts did resolve this several times, and I even went to our current mayor, who was the president of the council, Michelle Wu, asking her to have a hearing on this matter and stop continuing to fund discrimination, because the courts had ruled that this was discriminatory and it was an unfair practice with the hair test some time ago. The city kept appealing it. That's what dragged it out so long at the expense of the taxpayers. And even with the promotional exams, the same thing. There were things that they could have done. And even now, we're holding ourselves to a standard from the St. Clair's reports, which resulted from Charles Stewart killing his wife and unborn child. And it doesn't prohibit someone like me, and I'm not advocating because I'm leaving next month, but it doesn't prohibit someone like me from being part of leadership in the Boston Police Department. That is done deliberately to keep people who have a different opinion from doing so. And as to the recruiting point, Counselor, it is very difficult for me, having gone through 38 years and seeing what I've had to go through, to actually say to people that look like me, I want you to go through this. Things have gotten better as far as diversity, as far as race, as far as fairness. It's hard for me to say that to people, knowing what I know and knowing what I've experienced. So being a recruiter for the police department is something that I probably, at this time, the direction that it's gone, it would be hard for me to say to someone, I want to put you through that, particularly someone that I care about.
Yeah,
that's a very sad commentary that someone with my time and experience would feel that way.
Yeah, no, okay. I mean, I value your judgment and your opinion, and what I want to see, Larry, is a kind of a comprehensive recruiting plan that we're able to effectively recruit young men, young women into the Boston Police, onto the Boston Fire, to ensure that they know about the exam, they know about the process, but also ensuring that they are provided the tools to be a successful officer or fireman, but also helping them prepare for the examination as well. But it's about working together, coming up with the process that's fair, that's equitable, that's everyone's a part of, is transparent, but we need to do better in terms of recruiting and retention people of color.
Right. You touched on that, Council, and that's why I said it's very good that we have folks like yourself on the council, and I think we weeded out some of the problems in the last election. The residents of Boston have done so, and I'm not asking you to comment on that. But again, it's not the external. We're preparing people. We're having classes. We're partnering with our other partners, with JAGO and others, and getting people ready for the test. It's the internal issues that we just talked about, the unfair treatment when it comes to discipline, when it comes to testing, when it comes to promotions. That's where we lack. There's not a push for having people in those positions that when they see something wrong at that level, identifying and having the courage to address it. Like you do at the council. We don't really have that advocacy in the leadership, and we need it. It's much needed now, because I think with people seeing people of color, they see, oh, okay, it's diverse, but not having the right voice. Your dad had a Billy Celesta, and the Willis Saunders, Joe Carter's, folks of that magnitude who would push back on things that weren't right, because they were in the room during these conversations and not just looking out for themselves. We need more than people who are looking out for themselves, who don't let this fire, this small fire, campfire, become a raging inferno. And I think that's where we are now, because we can't fix what's broken in the city. We can't respond if we're dealing with internal problems that we shouldn't have to be dealing with. And it's just a matter of fairness.
No, those are good points. I remember Willis Saunders a Tuskegee Airman, probably the most respected Boston police officer, Larry, maybe in the history of the Boston Police. And he was a superintendent, and if my father would tell him what to do, he would push back with them because they had that relationship. And it'd say, Mayor, I think we need to do it this way. And it'd say, Superintendent, I think we need to do it this way. And they'd go back and forth. And a lot of times, Willis would win the argument because he's a professional.
To that point, Counselor, your dad brought Scotty down, a retired detective, because he valued his opinion. He wanted someone around him who could tell him from the ground level what was really going on, right? Who was going to be brutally honest with him. Yeah,
our friend Tom Scott, he was a wonderful man.
Yeah, that's right. And I know your dad valued him. He was part of your family.
Yeah. Well, you have to surround yourself with officers that you trust, officers of color, but they know the community better than the elected officials. They're from the community. They have friends and family that still live in the community. They're respected, and you have to have good people around you that can give you good advice, and you take the advice, and you know the advice they're giving you is only because they want to see the city succeed. That's what this is all about, is making Boston a better city for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, Counselor, I just wanted to call and really say thank you and wish you and your family, and especially my little friend Braden, your nephew, a happy Thanksgiving and a safe holiday. And I look forward to, even in my retirement, working with people like yourself and that have made a difference. That's why I understand sometimes at these meetings when people are calling out your family, and what they're not racist. They're not people who are not fair to everyone. I've dealt with your dad, and many times we disagree, but respectfully on issues, not on what the person looks like. And you've carried on that tradition, so I just want to say thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Larry, for your friendship, and more importantly, Larry, thank you for what you've done for the residents of Boston, especially during difficult times. You never backed away from the city. You always supported the residents of Boston under very difficult circumstances, and have the greatest respect for you, Larry.
Likewise. Thank you, sir, and I'll continue to listen. Appreciate you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you, Detective. You have another call. Call, you're live on the air. Go right ahead. Councilor Flynn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Council President Flynn, I appreciate you coming on and discussing some of the issues that we see going on with the city. As I was listening, you were talking about the probation department, and as I was listening, I was like, "Wow, that sounds like a fantasy." Because my recent experience with probation and what I'm hearing from a lot of returning citizens is totally different from what you described with your time on the probation department. Right now, I'm so glad that they got rid of probation fees, which eliminated a lot of the stress that returning citizens go through with coming out and have to worry about paying fees when they can't even find a job to do that.
That's right.
And being threatened to be surrendered because they don't pay the fees. So that's a stress that they no longer have. However, I believe that the probation department is overly worked, as well as a lot of other agencies, with the number of people that they're in charge. Because right now they do house visits and they don't give you a time because they want to make sure that you're there. But if you're working and you constantly have to take time off because you get a probation officer that needs to do a house visit, it won't give you a time. I've had people that I'm dealing with that have lost jobs because of it. And again, just the constant threat of being surrendered for every little thing. A lot of these guys were like, you know what, I might as well just finish my time behind the wall.
Yeah, I've heard that comment many times, and you are accurate. The probation fees, $65 when I was there, $65 a month, were high, and a lot of people couldn't afford the fees. And if the fees got up to, I think it was over $200, we were required as probation officers to surrender to surrender the person. So the person at Suffolk Superior Court would go before the magistrate and eventually to a final surrender. But not only that, if what also happens, they would hit you with the legal counsel fee at $150. So you're being punished for not having the financial means to be a successful probationer. And what I also found out is people would give up, they'd lose hope.
Absolutely.
And it was an unfair process, but the probation officers were required, unfortunately, I don't support it, but the probation officers were required to surrender people based on fees. I think they got away from that now, but that should never have been part of the job of a probation officer, of tracking people down to get money. The job of a probation officer is to help you get on your feet into a job training program, into a job, and that's what really the job of a probation officer is. And then the final point of your comment, probation officers have too many cases. I think at one time I had 90 cases. I was required to see them every 2 weeks, which is impossible. How could you see 45 people in a week and have a significant conversation with them, and then also be in the community, do house visits, be in the court system, be at the first session, be at the in the magistrate session, and then do your duties as a PO? It might be just putting on GPS or drug testing. So the probation officers at times would just follow the rules of the job and do the paperwork, and not, unfortunately, provide the guidance in the support to the probationers. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I did that as well, because at times the job was so difficult that you just wanted to make sure that your paperwork was in order, and you weren't providing your probationer with the right resources at times. You weren't providing the probationer with the respect. You weren't providing the probationer with the right services to get into a treatment program, into a job training program. And it wasn't a successful way to supervise someone in the criminal justice system. And, I agree with your comments.
Right. So, with the Office of Returning Citizens and all these events going on with returning citizens and resource fairs and stuff like that, if the probation officers didn't have such a taxing job, I would see them at some of these things so they can gain the knowledge to further help their probationers. But because of their workload, they, to ask them to attend these events and stuff, I don't know if it would be overtime pay or whatever, but they should be at a lot of these events to gain the information.
I agree. The probation officers never received overtime pay. They only got comp time. But what I would do as a probation officer, I would have sessions in the courts. I'd be at South Boston Court on Monday night, or Roxbury Court on Wednesday night, once every 2 weeks and once every 3 weeks. That was geared toward people that are working, so that they would not have to take a day off from work, because most of the probationers, if you don't work, you don't get paid. I would be at Roxbury Court from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night, or Southie Court from 5:30 to 7:30 at night, and that was geared towards people that were working full time. And then they would come in. Sometimes you'd give them a drug test, and they'd provide verification of employment. They'd provide verification of housing, of residence. But that process, that system worked. You don't need to have someone physically come into the courthouse. You meet that person, the probationer, where they're at, not where not where you're at. So it's about meeting them off-site. I would never take a person out of their job to come and see me. If someone is working 40 hours a week, I would never want that person to take a day off to see me. My job would be to see that person after hours, so the person would not I don't want to ever take pay out of someone's pocket, and that's what happens when someone has to take a day off to go see their probation officer.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. My other quick comment is related to the school system, and I'm glad that you acknowledge that the school system is failing our students. And with the rich history of Boston having the first public school in the country, and then with us, Boston being known as a educational hub of the country with all the universities in there, is there any talk, or has there been any talk with city councilors to further a relationship with all our higher education institutions, or colleges and universities that we have so many of?
We do have partnerships with colleges and universities, hospitals. It's not as strong as I think it could be, but we have the best colleges and universities in the world practically. People come to Boston for education, but they should be in the schools. Boston College, for example, Graduate School of Social Work, studying to be social workers. They should be in their Boston public schools doing social work. I started a program with Tufts Medical Dental Program. They're providing some dental service to students in BPS, the graduate students learning about dentistry. But it's important to have this structure, have it organized in a consistent management system where we know exactly what colleges, universities, and hospitals are doing in service to the students of the Boston public school system. They can be doing more. I expect that they will do more. They should do more. And it's about ensuring that we coordinate services and managing the system so we can provide students with the right support that they need.
Thank you very much, and I'll continue to listen, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Thank you for calling.
And Council, the lines are blowing up. We've got another caller. We want to squeeze in with the remaining about 4 minutes that we have. Caller, you're live on the air. Go right ahead.
Okay, good morning, Councilor.
Good morning.
Barbara, how are you? Good morning, happy Thanksgiving.
You too, Barbara.
Good. I'd just like to say I grew up with you as my mayor. My mother was a great supporter of yours, and I thank you for your honesty, your hard work, and especially for the people of color. I thank you for speaking on the mental health. That's important, and the incarcerated people that are in the injustice system. And so that's very important to me as a person that has a brother that's incarcerated and has life. And as a person that is a mental health counselor, that is so important to me. I am not a Boston resident, but Boston is my home. And Boston means a lot to me, so I will always continue to do work in the city of Boston. One of my things that I want to just talk about quickly is I am the board chair of the African American Diabetes Association, and the health disparities, and it being Diabetes Month for November, the health disparities that I see that goes on in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, those areas that are, some of them that are so torn down, the people are just hurting mentally and with their health. And as diabetes being one of the leading deaths for African Americans, what is the city really trying to do with that, with making sure that the health disparities, that should not be happening in 2023?
Thank you, Barbara. I agree. Also, sickle cell is an incredibly important disease that it's impacting a high number of members of communities of color in Boston. I went to several of their forums and events recently, but diabetes as well. The City of Boston Public Health Commission studies these issues and presents a report every year. But what we need to do is really study that report highlight what's in the report, but during budget process, budget season, ensuring that City of Boston Public Health services for people of color especially are addressed. And we need to do that. Residents need to get more involved talking about these issues. The city council needs to get more involved. I worked on some of these issues when Councilor Kim Janey was first elected. We started together on the Boston City Council. But also, Barbara, we talked about the hospitals in Boston and the colleges and universities and how much research money we get from grants from the federal government. The federal government can play a more active role, but also the colleges, universities, and hospitals need to coordinate more efficiently with the City of Boston Public Health. So we study these diseases, we have the resources to address them, but also we educate people in the community in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan about these diseases and how we can prevent them, how we can provide services to them. And I think you hit on the number one issue facing the City of Boston, Barbara.
Counselor and Ms. King, I'm sorry, but we got to, she knows with this, where we're at with them, right at the top of there. We have to have you come back. The phones were ringing off the hook, but unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour.
I'd love to come back, and I'd like to say thank you to the people that have called. I enjoyed listening to you. For those that haven't called, that have called, and we weren't able to take all those calls, I would love to come back and say hello again.
Excellent. Excellent.
It was a great conversation, and thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Ms. King, and thank
you.
You're welcome, and thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. It was wonderful to be here with you.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you the next time.
Happy Thanksgiving.